companies that optimize for the channel are the ones that will be most successful, because if you're a business and you speak to a consumer like they speak to their friends, then all of a sudden that relationship gets built, whether it's adding attachments, a voice note, a video, a photo. I think the consumer experience is better. I think the conversions will go up. I think if you execute this well, it would be a really great thing for consumers and a great thing for brands. WhatsApp does 100% delivery rates because they only charge you once it's been delivered. Open rates are over 90% currently, and conversion rates are 60%. So if you get it right, that is phenomenal. But I think over time, LLMs are going to get better. Like generative AI is going to get better. But in the short term, I think every business should adopt AI agents, whether it's for customer care. I think commerce is like key, that, and I see it's already there in some markets.
Deepesh Trivedi.
Yeah.
Welcome to Below the Fold.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. Long-time listener, first time on the show.
I'm surprised, actually. I have listeners from all the way from Singapore.
Yeah, I'm based in Singapore.
I'm very pleased to have you on the show. You come with a high recommendation to be here, so I'm very excited to speak to you. Just a reminder for our listeners before we get started. Below the Fold is actually now top 3 in the business category in the UAE. So thanks, everyone.
Congrats.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all the listeners out there. Appreciate you tuning in. And let's get on with another exciting episode with Deepesh. Deepesh, how about a little bit of an intro before we start discussing marketing today, business messaging, and other exciting topics?
Yeah, let's do that. So let me start with myself. I'm Deepesh. I'm the CEO of a company called UIB.AI. What we do, we're essentially a conversational AI platform. I guess our promise to the companies that we partner with and that we work with is, firstly, what we want to do is simplify kind of access to any messaging platform that they care about, which is where their customers are on. And then the second thing we want to do is make sure that they leverage AI to help them hit kind of their business goals. And the way that we would do that is we have a singular platform. So instead of having to integrate with multiple APIs, like we've got access to over 50 APIs. They'll integrate once and they'll basically have access to any channel they care about, whether that's, typically communication channels, right? So whether that's TikTok or WhatsApp or WeChat, we're pretty agnostic from that perspective. And then we would help them adopt AI technology to automate conversations, help people down the marketing funnel, automate messages. And so really depends on what their goals are. But probably the key pillars we're really focused on is sort of customer care. So how can we drive efficiency on their contact centers? Commerce. So how can we help them drive more sales using these platforms? And then marketing solutions. So lead generation or, remarketing messages on platforms like RCS or WhatsApp.
Right.
And so I'm relatively new into the role. I joined in 2024, but the company's been around 11 years. So I say, relatively speaking, I'm new to the role. Prior to this, I spent just over 15 years over at Meta. So, I started, a very early employee. I started in 2008, based out of the London office. And I was there for 3 years. So I did a bit of sales and a lot of like business operations. So I helped when we first launched our office in Dublin, kind of made a few of the critical hires there. And I did that for about 3 years. And then I ended up moving. I had the opportunity to move out to Singapore. And so really the plan was to kind of go out to Singapore for a year, help open up the Facebook Singapore office or our APAC operations at that time, and then basically moved back to London. But
which year was that?
2011.
2011, the Meta
Yes.
Facebook offices opened in
Correct.
Singapore. Okay.
Yeah. I think they technically opened in 2009, 2010. But at that point, they announced that Singapore was going to be the APAC operations, like the APAC headquarters. And I think they were really beefing up their investment. And long story short is I met my wife on the 3rd week in the office. And so I'm still there. But I spent the first 2 years building out sort of Facebook, Australia, New Zealand. So I spent a lot of time in Sydney and a lot of time in Auckland. And then 2013, I ended up moving to Tokyo to build out Facebook's Japan business.
Wow.
Which was a great experience. And then 2014, I ended up moving back to Singapore to run Facebook's retail and e-commerce industry for Southeast Asia. So, I was part of the team that helped open up the office in Bangkok, Manila, KL, and Jakarta. And then in 2018, I was employed as the employee number one for WhatsApp across APAC for our business messaging segment. So I joined just before we started to make money. So I joined pre-revenue. And then, I built and led that team for just over 5 years. And it became a really nice business over that period of time. The teams grew quite significantly. And I think they're all still doing very, very well today. I left in 23, the summer of 23. And then coincidentally, I'd become a dad pretty much exactly the same time. So I really took a decent amount of time off. And then 2024, a number of my old partners reached out, one of which was UIB. And then I decided to join the board of UIB initially, but then myself and the founder had and again, I had a pre-existing relationship with him, but myself and the founder just decided to bring me on board in a more operational fashion, and so I decided to come on board as the CEO last year.
That's truly inspiring and a very, very rich experience, and I do want to definitely double down on business messaging, but before we get there, and from your experience prior to you working with WhatsApp and UIB, you were at the forefront of what these big tech companies were releasing in terms of new consumer products or new consumer electronic products, or new internet trends, right? That were released from these companies. How serious is business messaging or messaging in today's consumer lives compared to all these past trends and surfaces that you were a part of?
Look, if you go back to the history of kind of Facebook, they tried and tested a number of things. And when we say the word business messaging, I guess this feels like more of a recent type term. But if I was to take a time machine back and I was to think about when I felt like I was introduced to business messaging, it was way before WhatsApp. It was actually, if I go back, it would have been 2013, 2014. Right. So to give you a bit of an idea, this is kind of when I kind of moved from Japan back into Singapore. I was overlooking retail and e-commerce for Southeast Asia. And what we noticed is the number of people to business interactions had kind of skyrocketed in Thailand, very uniquely Thailand. And very quickly after that, I think Vietnam came. And when I say it skyrocketed, it was significantly higher than any other market worldwide.
Across what channel?
This is specifically on Facebook.
Across Facebook?
Yes.
Yeah.
Every country, right?
Okay.
So literally it had skyrocketed. And so when we'll try and find out what the hell is happening, what we've realized what was happening is there wasn't many tools in the ecosystem in Thailand at that point in time for merchants and small businesses. And so what they would do is they would open up a Facebook profile. They'll take advantage of a page because it's free. They would upload their SKUs onto a page. And then people would see those items. They would then message the business and go, yep, I like image B. How do I buy it? And they'll go, great, here's our bank details. It's like 1,000 baht. Please send the money. Then they'll take a screenshot of the money being sent. And then they'll go, great, here's a picture of your parcel in Bangkok Post. And it'll be delivered in a couple of days. It was like very rudimentary, but this was happening at a massive, massive, massive scale. And they would, promote this through ads. So I think back then it was boosting your page posts. Then they had page post link ads, and now they have CTX advertising. So it's like a flywheel effect. It works incredibly, incredibly efficiently. And so we saw that happening, and that was huge. And to give you an idea of how big this concept is, I think about 2 years ago on an earnings call, Facebook announced, I think it does about $10 billion in what they call CTX advertising. CTX is, click to X, X being
Right.
Messenger, WhatsApp, Instagram Direct. And that was $10 billion 2 years ago. And so that's probably bigger than today than what it was 2 years ago. More recently, Mark kind of spoke in an interview with Ben Thompson and started to talk about business messaging. And he specifically called out Thailand, Vietnam. And he goes, well, Thailand, Vietnam are top 10 advertising markets for us. But if you were to look at the GDP of the country, it's like in the 30s.
You mean from a business messaging perspective? Or
He was talking about
overall?
advertising perspective.
Advertising.
Overall,
Oh.
advertising perspective.
Oh.
Thailand, Vietnam are meant to be Meta's top 10 in terms of total advertising revenue.
Okay.
But
impressive.
the GDP of the country is probably in its 30s. So he goes, when the team look into it, they go, well, what's driving that? And it was CTX, right?
Okay.
So business messaging is driving that growth. Then on top of that, he kind of then went on to say, well, a market like Thailand, they estimate, or the approximation is that 2% of the country's GDP in terms of transaction volume now goes through Messenger. If you ever go to Thailand, by the way, Messenger is not known to be the number one messaging platform.
No,
it's number two. Number one is Line.
Right.
So to give you an idea of how astronomically big this is, it's huge. Now, I feel like that's specifically commerce. I actually think business messaging is already very big around the world, especially some of these key WhatsApp markets like India, Sao Paulo. And funnily enough, I think UAE, I think from what I see in Dubai, so many businesses have adopted it. I don't know if they've adopted it on the API or not. I can't tell just by looking at it, but I do see a lot of similarities here as you do in markets like Sao Paulo. And I imagine the guys at Meta, if they ever listen to this, will turn around and probably shake their heads. But I understand the population of Sao Paulo and the population of India is significantly bigger. But if you were to just look at it on the street, there's so many businesses here that have adopted it. It's just that the population size is smaller, so it probably doesn't get the same amount of airtime as some of the bigger other populous markets. So as I think about business messaging, it's been around for a very long time. It's not, 12 years or, 11, 12 years is kind of my recollection of the first time I got introduced to it. And you can see, I think the pandemic has helped a lot in the acceleration of business messaging. A lot of digital companies, they saw, every business had to go through this digital transformation wave during the pandemic. But I think business messaging was, for me, the most interesting because all of a sudden people are stuck at home. They've got to get through to their airlines. They've got to get through to their banks. And they realize telephones suck, right? How old is the telephone?
Oh, gosh. I don't know. Late 1800s?
Yeah. So it's about 1.5 centuries old, right? Pretty old technology. Yeah, it's back, 5 years ago, it's the primary way of communication if you wanted to speak to a business. How old is email? About half a century, thereabouts.
Yeah.
Again, the two most primary ways to get through to businesses. And I think people realized how frustrating those platforms are. I can give you a personal experience. I remember having to sit for 2 hours to get through to my airline when they opened up flights in Singapore. And the common experience is being passed around multiple agents, having to say your mother's maiden name like 7 times. It's a terrible user experience. And I think at that point, businesses, at least consumers, realize there's got to be a better way. And I think business messaging was that new technology and that pathway forward. And so the world is just changing. I
have to admit, I'm much more comfortable having a text or messaging experience with a business rather than a phone call. Even though a phone call is a human, for sure.
Right, yeah.
But things can get lost in translation over a phone call. Yeah, things could get emotional.
Yeah.
Whereas a message, I can reply to it any second, any time. I could take a few minutes off, do something else, and then go back to my conversation. Right? There's no one I need to care for, I suppose.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think the communication part is real, and so I think that plays a big part in how people think about it. And I think the real time, becomes really important. Like again, me going through that period where calling my airline and sitting there for 2 hours, like my phone was on, speaker on, so I can go and try and do some other things, but my phone always had to be around, and so. Yeah, it's a little bit awkward.
When you were part of the WhatsApp team monetization, right?
Yeah.
Were you expecting that one day people would use or businesses would use WhatsApp for marketing for business?
I'll be honest, it's probably one of the reasons why I moved over, because you can start to sense that something is happening. Like one of the reasons why, I joined Facebook back in 2008 is like, I remember at the time I couldn't articulate it, but you knew something was happening. I think I joined at a time that the top 3 social networks, by the way, at that point were like MySpace in the UK by a country mile, then maybe Bebo, and then I think Facebook was one of the smaller ones. I remember our sales pitches would have us high engagement, but the reaches were really low. And very fortunately, I joined maybe a couple of months in, Facebook eclipsed everything.
Yeah.
Now, WhatsApp was already a big platform, but it not for businesses. It was a big platform on the consumer side. But I think anyone who worked on that WhatsApp period at that time, when you worked on it, you could just see it. You can see how great the experience is. You can see how much more convenient it was. And at one point, you feel like you're just taking a look into the future. So Facebook, people always say we have no right to win. We've got to work really hard to win in this space. But you could definitely see something. And yeah, it can be difficult. Sometimes it can feel a bit difficult to articulate. But at least when we came in pre-revenue, you can feel how great the experience was.
And so from your role now, sitting in a market, in a region where you have a lot of there's a lot of diversity in terms of messaging channels, right? You mentioned Line a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Obviously, we have WeChat over there. What would you say are some of the key differentiators for some of these messaging channels that perhaps lack in WhatsApp?
Yeah, let's use it both ways, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think WhatsApp and Google are probably the two that have proactive outbound messages. I think a lot of the other channels are really, I don't know if they're worried about the user experience, but you don't get it. You don't get marketing messages. I don't think you really get OTP, and you don't really get utility. And so the experience is different. And so as a result, there's an education gap when you speak to businesses, because they go, well, I can do this on WhatsApp. Why can't I just do it on WeChat? Or why can't I do it on Line? And the product just doesn't allow it. So there's a differentiator there. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there's no interoperability between different companies. So there's that challenge. But yeah, I mean, one of the things that WhatsApp has is obviously marketing messages. It's incredibly powerful. It works really well if you execute it well. I think if you just throw SMS into WhatsApp, it doesn't work that well. You've chosen the wrong medium for it, and I'll explain why shortly.
Mm-hmm. You mean just text?
I mean, like, maybe it does for some companies, but I've not seen too many examples where people have gone from taking, the messages from one channel, thrown it into WhatsApp and gone, oh, it works really well. But the companies that optimize for the channel are the ones that will be most successful, because if you're a business and you speak to a consumer like they speak to their friends, then all of a sudden that relationship gets built, whether it's adding attachments, a voice note, a video, a photo. But if you just throw in your traditional SMS into WhatsApp, it doesn't work so well. So look, WhatsApp has a lot of things that many of these other companies, for whatever reason, have not released at this point. But then you look at a company like WeChat, and that they have significantly more, I think, than a platform like WhatsApp. I don't know if they do marketing messages. I don't think they do, but they have like the mini apps program, which is hugely successful with businesses. Completely different user experience. I don't know if WhatsApp would ever copy.
What is the mini apps?
The mini apps are effectively like having a mini web browser within the WeChat platform. So if you're in China and you wanna, you're using WeChat, but then all of a sudden you wanna go onto Tmall, there'll be like a Tmall mini app program, and click on it, and then it's like shopping on Tmall all of a sudden.
Right. So it's a microsite within the
Correct.
app, within Tmall's page.
Yeah, and it allows them to basically have like a commerce experience that another developer has built specifically, within the WeChat platform, and so that again enables transactions, enables ride-hailing use cases, enables all this stuff that WhatsApp doesn't have today, and no one else has it, by the way. I think they're the only platform that has, it's like a super app. It's really the only platform that has something like that. So there's two sides to the pendulum. I think every product is different. I think it's down to the market. It's down to the nuance. It's, even Messenger is different to WhatsApp, and so is Instagram, and it's the same company. Yeah. So the product is definitely very, very, very different.
Yeah, I mean, WeChat, the first thing that would come to mind from WeChat, it's a super app. They're really trying to cover everything.
I agree. I
mean, I was actually in Beijing just a week ago, and I can vouch that I used Alipay actually for everything.
Okay.
And I really didn't need anything else, any other app.
Wow.
And with WeChat, I would say it's probably the same experience. My friend actually that traveled with me, was using WeChat, and he literally was just scanning anything and paying for
Yeah,
anything
right.
through
Yeah.
WeChat, or ordering a cab, or ordering food, or literally doing anything. And so that's I guess the super app sort of positioning,
Yeah.
where it comes to no surprise that even brands would be sort of incorporated via
Yes.
these microsites within the app. Do you think maybe WhatsApp would be headed in that same direction?
It's hard to say, kind of having sat within sort of the WhatsApp part of the business for so long, and at least interacted with a lot of the engineers. They have really key principles, which is like, it has to be simple. They optimize on speed. They optimize on simplicity. If you think about some of the biggest markets for WhatsApp, it's like India, it's Brazil. It's about being able to make it relatable to, the everyday person. And these are markets that are not necessarily the most advanced on, bandwidth or internet. And so it's a hard one to sit down and say, I know people look at it and they have the ambition, but whether or not it translates in the same way, it's hard to say. And again, I've been out of Facebook for 2 years, or out of WhatsApp for 2 years. So it's very difficult to know how the conversations have progressed. But at least when I was there, you kind of had two camps. You had people who were really ambitious and want to do these big, bold things. And then you had people who have been there for a really long time and they're very principle based. And they're like, look, WeChat would not work in India. WeChat would not work in, Brazil, but WhatsApp does.
Right.
And to some extent, if you were to look at user numbers, WhatsApp is the most successful messaging platform like on the planet. And so you've got to find a balance.
Right. But you have access to the WhatsApp API, obviously. You're seeing lots of developments in there.
We do actually. It's actually, I'd say it's moving way quicker than when I was there, is what it feels like. So things like Lite, I don't know if you know what that is, but for marketing messages, and then you've got things like the voice API, and I think groups API. These things are still in beta, but we're seeing more and more advancements, which is really exciting for businesses,
right?
Because these are the sort of things that they want to see.
That's very exciting. There's definitely lots of room for growth when it comes to business messaging in the region here. What I'm interested to know from you is, you've worked in these roles where you've been exposed to marketing budgets from big advertisers and how they've been spent, right, across channels. And so from that, you've gained probably a view of how the marketing landscape has evolved over time, right? Based on where these advertisers spending their money.
Yeah.
And what do you think has changed today is going to change today with business messaging? Because you have a view that says business messaging is going to take budget away from other channels or marketing channels, and others say no. It has nothing to do with marketing. It has nothing to do with social media, for example, or video. Business messaging is an entirely different pocket. What's your view on that?
My view is, I don't think any of those answers are right or wrong. I think it's fairly complex. Okay, so business messaging can encompass multiple different solutions, right? So for example, you can do customer care. That sits in kind of the customer experience team or the customer care team. And that has its own budget. You then have paid messaging, so these marketing messages that can be sent one way, and that typically sits in CRM teams or re-engagement teams. And so that you are taking share of budget away from somewhere else, and that's typically SMS, or it's an email is basically free.
An owned channel.
Yes,
quote unquote,
correct. And I think that's where you can win that share of voice. The good thing is, budgets are typically fungible, which means if it performs well and there's opportunity to capture more reach, then they can typically find budgets and move it from somewhere else. But you're not taking money away from acquisition channels. You're not taking money away from YouTube. You're not taking money away from Facebook. This is a completely it's a different budget for a different team. And then you have things like commerce solutions, and that typically sits with product teams, and you're essentially building a company another distribution channel for their business outside of the app or the website potentially. And so when I think about it, like budgets sit in different places. And I mean, you are taking budget from somewhere. It doesn't just magically reappear. But over time, hopefully what will happen is there'll be budget set aside for this. I mean, as I think about the evolution of kind of marketing as we think about business messaging is no different, by the way, to thinking about the evolution of ad. I mean, marketing has evolved for as long as time's been around and technology's been around, right? So you think that, you know, at one point it was outdoor advertising, and then it shifted to radio, and then it shifted to television, and then you kind of had internet advertising. And when you think about display advertising, I remember this when I first joined Facebook. We used to have this partnership with Microsoft, and Microsoft were allowed to sell IAB standard formatted ads on the website. One of the things...
These were never casted on Facebook.
Sorry?
Excuse me. We've never seen these on Facebook or on social media, have we?
Yeah, they used to be on Facebook. I can't remember what year we ended the partnership. I think it was 2010 or something.
Okay.
Very early on. It was
short-lived.
Short-lived because... I don't really know the exact details of the partnership, but I think they ended it because we had inventory to sell, and we were building a direct sales team, and we can build. But my point is, when we were selling ads, we weren't selling IAB standard formatted ads. That was being sold by Microsoft. When we were selling ads, we were selling native integrated ads. I think at the time they were called ASUs. Which I couldn't even tell you what that acronym stands for.
I remember RHS, right hand side as.
Right, so it's like before that it was named ASUs, okay. And we used to turn around to businesses and say it's native advertising. You have to upload your own creative. You've got to upload your own text, and then you figure out the targeting. And agencies hated us because they're like, nope, we would much rather have these standard ads, and we can throw them onto YouTube, throw them onto Microsoft, throw them onto Facebook. And we said no, but media agencies that figured this out did exceptionally well. I mean, that's another podcast in its own. But, you know, these independent agencies would get API access, and they became hugely, hugely successful. As I think about business messaging, it's just another evolution of that. So if you think about marketing has historically been, you have a message, you have some targeting, you send it out, and then if you're lucky, you'll get a conversion. Otherwise, you don't hear anything. And if they hate it, then you don't hear anything. If they like it, you don't hear anything. That's the way internet ads work in a lot of different ways. With business messaging, if a business wants, you can enable two-way messaging. So, you know, somebody sends me an ad for, you know, a pair of shoes. If all of a sudden I like those shoes, but I have a couple of questions and I can message back, then that becomes a really great consumer experience. Because think about when you go to the mall, and if you're in a shop and you're thinking about buying some shoes, then one of the things that you can actually do is, yeah, I'm kind of interested in these shoes, but you know what? Let me just speak to a sales clerk and find out a bit more about, you know, the price, the warranty, whatever it might be. And then you make the purchase. If you can translate that experience online, then that becomes a phenomenal experience for the consumer. And I feel like that's what's evolving. However, the challenge is marketing has always been focused on getting creative, sending messages, doing it one way. And so then to think about how do we add in AI to answer questions, and then how do we add a human in the loop if there's complicated questions, will impact a marketing team's, you know, OPEX or their cost of goods. So, but I think that is where things are evolving to. But I think the consumer experience is better. I think the conversions will go up. I think if you execute this well, it would be a really great thing for consumers and a great thing for brands. Yeah.
And I think anyways, the messaging is a more massive channel for the end users, and it only makes sense for businesses to try to take advantage of that touch point, but that doesn't mean that consumers are reducing their time on Instagram, for example, or on social media.
Really not, no.
And these are still completely very important channels.
I think so. Look, I think if you're a business, the thing about WhatsApp, if you think about paid messaging, marketing messages, so paid messaging, it's bottom of the funnel. So you've got a bunch of customers, you've got their phone number, you want to send them a message to buy again. You're either trying to grow LTV, bring back churn customers, or reward your loyal customers, however you've broken up your segment. What Instagram or YouTube or Facebook does is actually capture acquisition budgets. And so they try and capture new customers. That's typically at least when I was there, when I worked on ads for 10 years, they really cared about, cost per acquisition. And those budgets, by the way, are significantly higher than these re-engagement budgets by, from what I saw, somewhere between 7 to 10x. So hugely important. If your goal is to acquire new customers, don't stop spending on Facebook advertising or YouTube or wherever your marketing mix looks like. But if you're thinking about re-engagement, I would A/B test, email, SMS, and WhatsApp. I think the statistic, and this is not a Facebook statistic, this is a third-party research statistic, which was, WhatsApp does 100% delivery rates because they only charge you once it's been delivered. Open rates are over 90% currently, and conversion rates are 60%. So if you get it right, that is phenomenal because SMS, email, it's like less than 1%.
Yeah.
So it's significant.
And you must have heard in the market that WhatsApp is soon going to become an acquisition channel also as well.
Oh yeah, I did. I read that. I'm not too familiar with the details. Right, so you're going to start to put ads in status, which will be interesting. I think what I'm not familiar with is how they're going to do things like targeting. But yeah, I think it's interesting because then, yeah, you're right. That would become an acquisition channel and a great revenue generator for WhatsApp.
Yeah, so it'll become an acquisition channel, but it'll still remain a powerful re-engagement channel.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to spend the remaining time just to talk a little bit about the future outlook.
Okay.
I think we can do another session to talk about best practices in general.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I feel like we can talk a little bit more around the best practices, so we'll leave that for another time. Let's talk a little bit about future outlook. Is every business bound to release an AI bot eventually? So
let's not use the term AI bot. Let's use the term AI agent. I think that's a bit more up to date in my mind. I think so. I think they should. I think so.
Versus starting with a rule-based agent, right?
Correct.
And then going with a more complex.
There's several layers to this, right? So you've got kind of your flows, which is rule-based. Then you start thinking about AI agents and what they can accomplish. And so what we typically see is a lot of enterprise companies are very comfortable using RAG technology, right? And the reason for that is because they've got a website or a PDF or a series of documents that they can train the agent on that says only answer questions within the document. And it does that very efficiently. So people aren't looking up FAQs. They can just ask a question and it gets back. The reason that's good is because when you think about customer care, like most of the questions that come up are typically an FAQ anyway. So you don't want to waste a person's time doing that. For the rest of it, you want to have a human in the loop, right? So if they can't answer the question you want, make sure that it's easily accessible to have access to a human. As for generative AI, now look, we don't see a lot of businesses adopting generative AI, right? Because they're so worried about hallucinations, they're worried about the wrong answer. If you were to ask a question to Amazon and the AI gave you the wrong answer, you don't go, that LLM is terrible. You go, Amazon, what's going on? Like you blame the brand, and so they're so worried about it that they don't adopt it. And the thing is, you have dials, right? So you have like risk levels. I think
hallucination dials.
Yes, pretty much. I think my CTO always describes it as a temperature dial, right? So there's ways that you can make it less risky for your business, but companies are adverse to it. But I think over time, LLMs are going to get better. Like generative AI is going to get better. But I think in the short term, I think every business should adopt AI agents, whether it's for customer care. I think commerce is like key that, and I see it's already there in some markets like Thailand, Vietnam, but even outside of that, I think it's a really good way for businesses to adopt it. Large companies can get very sensitive around this. I've been speaking to many companies for the best part of a decade, even during my time at WhatsApp, and they don't want transactions to happen outside of their app. So the idea something could happen within WhatsApp is a little bit scary for them. But I think over time, businesses need to embrace it. WhatsApp's never going to replace an Amazon or a similar like company, but it's a great way for them to get an acquisition, and then Amazon just has better features for them. Same with airlines, same with ride hailing, same with pretty much any industry. But I think going back to your original question, yes, companies should be adopting AI agents, at least in the short to medium term. Get them trained, get them better, even if you're not using generative AI, even if you're just using RAG.
Right. Cool. Do you have any advice on two businesses that are just starting to adopt messaging? Would you say go immediately build your AI agent, or would you say try a use case or two?
I would say start with one use case. One of the biggest challenges within large companies, this is less for small to medium companies, but for large businesses, is that because it touches so many departments, no one really knows where to start. Nobody wants to kind of go into it. And so it really, a C-level needs to own it and say, look, what is the first use case we're going to go after? Let's go after marketing messages. It's really straightforward. Let's really optimize it well. Let's make it a valuable channel for us. The second thing they really need to invest in on is attribution and measurement. You know, that because again, you've got to make sure it's working. You've got to go back to the board or to leadership to turn around to them and say, look, we've tested it. It's working really well. This is kind of the numbers, and they've got to, the ROI needs to make sense. Otherwise the future investments won't be there.
Fantastic. Deepesh, where can we find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place to start. Or feel free to check out the UIB website. If you have questions, if you want to test our platform, we're giving it away for free for the first 14 days. If anybody wants to test it, it's still in beta, our self-serve platform. Or if you want to speak to me or somebody on the team, you can also request through our submission form on the website. It's a great place to start.
Sounds great. Deepesh, thank you so much for coming on the show, and I look forward to the next episode with you.
Awesome. Thanks, man.